It all started with a dog. A simple, everyday occurrence, an animal wandering too far, would ignite an international crisis. In the autumn of 1925, on the tense border between Greece and Bulgaria, a stray dog unknowingly crossed into enemy territory. What should have been a trivial incident quickly escalated into gunfire, an invasion, and a diplomatic standoff that brought Europe to the brink of war. This is the incredible, yet nearly forgotten story of the War of the Stray Dog, one of history's most bizarre and unexpected conflicts. Welcome to Old Around the World, where we travel back in time to bring histories back to life. In 1925, tensions between Greece and Bulgaria had been simmering for years due to unresolved border disputes after World War I. Both nations had suffered territorial losses and political instability, fueling resentment. Their borders, particularly near the town of Petrich, were heavily militarized, with soldiers on both sides maintaining a constant, uneasy watch. The fragile peace shattered on October 18, 1925, in one of history's most bizarre sparks for war. According to reports, a Greek soldier stationed at the border was chasing after his stray dog when it crossed into Bulgarian territory. Without hesitation, the soldier followed, stepping across the border in pursuit of his pet. This seemingly innocent act would soon escalate into an international incident. Bulgarian border guards, already suspicious of Greek military movements, interpreted the soldier's trespass as a hostile act. Without warning, they opened fire, killing the Greek soldier on sight. Greek troops, upon hearing the gunfire and learning of their fallen comrade, demanded retribution, further straining the already tense relations between the two countries. What should have been a minor diplomatic incident quickly spiraled out of control. The Greek government, outraged by what they perceived as an unprovoked attack, mobilized its military forces. Unwilling to let the death of a single soldier go unanswered, Greece declared war on Bulgaria. The so-called War of the Stray Dog had begun. The Greek public, already distrustful of Bulgaria due to past conflicts, erupted in fury. Newspapers denounced the Bulgarian attack as a barbaric act, fueling nationalist sentiments. Political leaders, eager to assert their dominance, used the incident to justify a full-scale military response. Within days, Greece mobilized its army, moving troops toward the Bulgarian border. The Greek strategy was aggressive. They launched an invasion of Bulgarian territory, targeting the town of Petrich. The Greek government viewed this as a necessary measure to defend national honor and deter further Bulgarian aggression. However, their swift and forceful response was met with international concern. Bulgaria, caught off guard, scrambled to defend its borders. The Bulgarian government immediately called upon the League of Nations, appealing for diplomatic intervention. While their military was prepared to retaliate, they knew that open conflict with Greece could destabilize the entire region. Despite Bulgarian appeals for peace, Greek forces pressed forward. Civilians in border towns fled in terror as Greek troops advanced. The world watched as what started as a minor border skirmish threatened to become a full-scale war. Petrich, a small but strategically important town, became the focal point of the conflict. Greek forces launched an offensive, quickly overwhelming Bulgarian defenses in the area. Civilians were caught in the crossfire as Greek soldiers occupied the town, raising their flag in a symbolic act of victory. The Bulgarian army, though outnumbered, launched a counteroffensive, engaging in skirmishes with Greek troops. The fighting was fierce but short-lived. Both sides suffered casualties, though exact numbers remain uncertain. Reports suggest that around 50 people, including soldiers and civilians, were killed during the brief conflict. As Greek troops solidified their position in Petrich, international pressure began to mount. The League of Nations, still struggling to establish itself as a global peacekeeper after World War I, saw this conflict as a test of its authority. Several European powers, including Britain and France, urged Greece to withdraw before the situation escalated further. Despite international pressure, Greek forces remained in Petrich, unwilling to retreat without concrete assurances from Bulgaria. The world was now paying close attention, and the League of Nations was forced to act swiftly to prevent a larger war. As tensions escalated, the League of Nations called for an emergency meeting in Geneva. This was one of the first real tests of the League's ability to mediate conflicts between nations. Greece defended its actions, claiming self-defense and seeking justice for the slain soldier, while Bulgaria maintained that the Greek invasion was an unjustified act of aggression. Under mounting diplomatic pressure, Greece faced condemnation from multiple nations. The League ruled that the Greek invasion was disproportionate and demanded an immediate withdrawal. They warned of economic sanctions if Greece refused to comply. Bulgaria, eager to avoid a prolonged conflict, agreed to a ceasefire. They pledged to cooperate with the League's demands, demonstrating a willingness to resolve the issue peacefully. This diplomatic stance further isolated Greece on the international stage. With global scrutiny intensifying, the Greek government faced a difficult choice: withdraw or risk further consequences. The war, which had begun over a stray dog, was now being decided in diplomatic halls rather than on the battlefield. Faced with increasing pressure from the League of Nations and the threat of sanctions, Greece reluctantly agreed to withdraw its forces from Bulgarian territory. The decision was met with mixed reactions at home. Some viewed it as a humiliation, while others saw it as a necessary move to maintain international standing. The Greek army began pulling out of Petrich, marking the official end of the conflict. The withdrawal was closely monitored by the League to ensure compliance. No further military engagements occurred, and within days, the region returned to relative peace. Bulgaria, despite suffering an invasion, refrained from seeking further retaliation. Their government's diplomatic approach had paid off, reinforcing their position as a responsible member of the international community. By the end of October 1925, the War of the Stray Dog was officially over. The conflict, though brief, had tested the effectiveness of international diplomacy and raised questions about the fragility of peace in the Balkans. If you're still with us, please like this video. Though the War of the Stray Dog lasted only a few days, its impact was felt by both Greece and Bulgaria. The conflict left an estimated 50 dead, including soldiers and civilians, while the psychological toll on those in border towns was even greater. Families were uprooted, homes were looted or destroyed, and an atmosphere of fear lingered long after the fighting stopped. For Greece, the war had financial consequences. Mobilizing troops, engaging in battle, and then facing diplomatic intervention had strained government resources. The eventual League of Nations ruling forced Greece to pay Bulgaria reparations totaling 45,000 gold francs, an amount that, though relatively small, was a humiliating admission of wrongdoing in the eyes of the Greek public. Bulgaria, on the other hand, gained a diplomatic victory. Despite suffering an invasion, they emerged with their sovereignty intact and with international sympathy on their side. Their measured response, appealing to the League rather than escalating militarily, strengthened their standing in the global arena. In the end, both nations had suffered in different ways. While Bulgaria endured an invasion, Greece faced international condemnation. The war demonstrated how even minor conflicts could have lasting consequences, shaping the way both countries handled future border disputes. The War of the Stray Dog became one of the early tests for the League of Nations, an organization still struggling to establish itself as a credible peacekeeping force after World War I. Many doubted whether the League had the authority or capability to prevent conflicts, especially in volatile regions like the Balkans. However, the League's swift response to the crisis helped de-escalate tensions before they spiraled into a larger conflict. By pressuring Greece to withdraw and imposing financial penalties, the League demonstrated that diplomacy could resolve disputes without resorting to prolonged warfare. This success was seen as a validation of the League's mission, offering hope that international cooperation could prevent future wars. Yet, the resolution also exposed the League's limitations. Its success depended on the willingness of countries to comply with its rulings, and in this case, Greece backed down primarily due to the threat of economic sanctions rather than any deep respect for the League's authority. If a more powerful nation had been involved, or if Greece had been less vulnerable to international pressure, the outcome might have been different. Despite these limitations, the War of the Stray Dog remains one of the League's rare diplomatic victories. It provided a template for future interventions, but also served as a warning that not all conflicts could be resolved so easily, an issue that would become painfully clear in the years leading up to World War II. The war was a symptom of a much larger issue, the long-standing instability of the Balkans. The region had been a hotbed of nationalist conflicts, territorial disputes, and ethnic rivalries for centuries. Even before World War I, the Balkans had been called the powder keg of Europe, a name that remained relevant well into the 20th century. The Greek-Bulgarian rivalry stretched back decades, with both nations vying for territory in Macedonia and Thrace. The Balkan Wars, 1912 to 1913, and World War I had already left deep scars, and the Treaty of Nuri, 1919, forced Bulgaria to cede land to Greece, fueling further resentment. The War of the Stray Dog was just another chapter in this long history of regional conflicts. Even though the war was brief, it highlighted how easily small incidents could escalate into international crises. A single gunshot over a border violation had nearly led to a full-scale war. If not for the League of Nations intervention, the fighting could have spread, pulling in other regional powers. This conflict also foreshadowed future tensions. The Balkans would remain a region of geopolitical struggle, eventually becoming a flashpoint in World War II and later, during the Cold War. The War of the Stray Dog serves as a reminder of how fragile peace can be in regions with deep-seated historical grievances. Despite its dramatic nature, the War of the Stray Dog has largely faded from public memory. It was overshadowed by larger global conflicts, and as time passed, it became little more than a footnote in history books. Yet, for those who lived through it, the war was a moment of chaos, uncertainty, and fear. In Greece, the war was soon overshadowed by other political crises and economic struggles. The Greek government, facing internal pressures, downplayed the conflict's significance to move on from the diplomatic embarrassment. Meanwhile, in Bulgaria, the war was remembered more as a victory for diplomacy rather than as a military conflict. Even among historians, the war is often overlooked in favor of more dramatic or prolonged conflicts. However, its implications were significant. It was a rare instance where international diplomacy successfully prevented a regional conflict from spiraling into a larger war. It also highlighted the ongoing instability in the Balkans, a region that would continue to see bloodshed throughout the 20th century. The War of the Stray Dog may not be well known, but it remains a fascinating case study in the unpredictability of history. It serves as a testament to how minor events, something as simple as a dog crossing a border, can have profound and unexpected consequences. The War of the Stray Dog might seem like a strange relic of the past, but its lessons are still relevant today. Around the world, border tensions continue to spark conflicts. From the Korean Peninsula to the India-Pakistan border, minor incidents, whether accidental crossings, skirmishes, or misunderstandings, can quickly escalate into military confrontations. In an age of advanced technology and diplomacy, one might assume that such small conflicts could never lead to full-scale war. However, history has shown that human error, nationalism, and political agendas often override reason. The same dynamics that fueled the War of the Stray Dog, territorial disputes, national pride, and rapid military responses, are still at play in modern geopolitics. Additionally, international organizations like the United Nations now play a similar role to what the League of Nations attempted in the 1920s. The War of the Stray Dog demonstrates the importance of diplomatic intervention and the potential for mediation to prevent unnecessary wars. However, it also serves as a warning. Diplomacy only works when nations are willing to listen. Ultimately, this bizarre conflict serves as a cautionary tale. It reminds us that wars are not always started by grand political schemes or massive military campaigns. Sometimes, all it takes is a stray dog, a misunderstood action, and a single gunshot to plunge nations into chaos. The War of the Stray Dog, though brief, was a remarkable moment in history. It highlighted the fragility of peace, the effectiveness and limitations of international diplomacy, and the ever-present dangers of unresolved border tensions. Though largely forgotten, its lessons remain relevant in a world where misunderstandings and rapid escalations can still lead to unexpected consequences. Please like, subscribe, and comment for more like this one. By a history lover.